There's an idea that's been repeated so often that almost no one questions it anymore, that our ancestors lived dirty, smelly, and covered in dirt their entire lives. The reality is much more interesting, and also more uncomfortable, than you might imagine. Let's start with the obvious. Soap as we know it today, with that scented lather you buy at the supermarket, is a relatively recent invention. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans didn't have access to anything similar. But that doesn't mean they didn't clean themselves. Early Homo sapiens used water from rivers and lakes as their primary method of hygiene, and in many ancient cultures, they rubbed their bodies with sand, ash, or even animal fat mixed with aromatic herbs to remove residue and control odor. In ancient Egypt, for example, a primitive version of soap made with vegetable oils and alkaline salts already existed, used both for the body and to treat skin diseases. The Egyptians bathed frequently. Some historians estimate several times a week, a surprising practice compared to medieval Europe, where bathing was considered dangerous to health for centuries because it was believed that water opened the pores and allowed disease to enter. Now, let's go back further, to the hunter-gatherers who lived tens of thousands of years before any civilization. They had no soap, no temples with public baths, but they had something we have almost completely lost, a much more developed sense of smell and a different relationship with their own body odor. Sweat and the natural scent of skin were not seen as dirty or shameful, but as information. Body odor served to recognize members of one's own group, to detect another person's state of health, and even played a role in mate selection, something that modern science has confirmed through studies on pheromones and genetic compatibility. Here's a fact that surprises many people. Your skin is covered by millions of bacteria that, under natural conditions, form a kind of protective shield. This microscopic ecosystem, known as the skin microbiome, helps regulate the skin's pH and keep harmful pathogens away. When we bathe several times a day with harsh antibacterial soaps, as has become common in the modern world, we are actually disrupting this balance, and some dermatologists today recommend not overdoing it with excessive cleansing, precisely for this reason. Going back to our ancestors, in cold climates like those faced by the first humans who migrated to Europe during the Ice Age, bathing in icy water wasn't a daily option. It would have been downright dangerous, capable of causing hypothermia. In those cases, cleansing was achieved with dry methods, rubbing the body with animal hides, moss, or certain plants with astringent properties that absorbed oil and sweat. There is also archaeological evidence that some ancient communities used primitive saunas, enclosed spaces where steam was generated by heating stones with fire, and then people were immersed in cold water. This practice served not only for hygiene but also as a social and purification ritual, something still preserved in cultures like the Finnish sauna or in the Temascal traditions of Mesoamerica. Interestingly, many of these ancient practices had a more robust biological basis than we might think. The heat opens the pores, promotes sweating, and helps eliminate toxins naturally, while the shock of cold water afterwards stimulates blood circulation. They didn't have microscopes or laboratories, but through observation and repetition over generations, they arrived at methods that science now supports. The Greeks and Romans took this practice even further, transforming bathing into a full-fledged social event. Roman baths were veritable complexes with pools of cold, warm, and hot water, steam rooms, and even spaces for exercising before bathing. Going to the baths wasn't just about hygiene. It was leisure, social gathering, and even business, a ritual that occupied several hours of the day for any Roman citizen of means. Interestingly, after the fall of the Roman Empire, much of this knowledge about public hygiene was lost for centuries in Europe, while in other regions of the world, such as the medieval Islamic world, the custom of frequent bathing persisted and was even considered a religious obligation linked to ritual cleansing. In other parts of the world, different cultures developed entirely independent solutions to the same problem. In Mesoamerica, cultures like the Maya and the Aztecs were already using the Temascal, a kind of ceremonial stone sauna, long before they had contact with Europe. In Japan, the tradition of communal bathing in natural hot springs, known as onsen, also dates back to ancient times and remains a deeply ingrained social practice to this day. This suggests that the human need to bathe, care for the skin, and transform this act into a moment of collective relaxation is not limited to a single culture, but rather arose independently in different corners of the world, as if it were part of a biological and social need shared by our entire species. Another aspect we often overlook is hair and dental care. Objects that functioned as rudimentary combs, carved from bone or wood, have been found in various ancient cultures. These were used not only for aesthetic purposes but also to eliminate lice and parasites, a real and constant problem in prehistoric life. For teeth, many cultures used chewed twigs from certain trees whose fibers functioned similarly to a brush, in addition to containing natural compounds with antibacterial properties, a practice that, surprisingly, is still carried out today in some regions of Africa and Asia with the so-called misbach stick. What is certain is that the concept of unpleasant body odor is largely a modern cultural construct, further fueled by the cosmetics industry starting in the 20th century, when soap and deodorant brands began convincing the public that natural human odor was something shameful that should be completely eliminated. Before that, in most societies, a certain level of body odor was simply part of being human, neither good nor bad, just a biological reality. It is also worth considering how odor was specifically addressed, beyond bathing itself. In many ancient cultures, aromatic resins, dried flowers, and crushed herbs were rubbed directly onto the skin, a kind of rudimentary perfume that served a dual purpose: to smell pleasant to the rest of the group, and in some cases, to repel annoying insects like mosquitoes. This was especially useful in hot, humid climates where diseases transmitted by bites posed a constant risk to survival. This use of aromatic plants wasn't decorative or superficial. It was a practical strategy that combined hygiene, health, and social life into a single daily gesture. So, the next time you think of your ancestors as dirty and primitive, remember that they understood something about their bodies that we, surrounded by cleaning products, have often forgotten: that skin, sweat, and even odor have a function, and that true hygiene doesn't always mean eliminating every trace of who we naturally are. If this kind of curiosity captivates you as much as it does me, subscribe to the channel, because here we continue to unearth the questions we all ask ourselves at some point, but that almost no one bothers to answer.